Hello and welcome back to the next One Piece review and discussion. We are here with the next installment and with surprise, another flashback that I don't think anyone was expecting to come. So, without further ado, chapter 1183. Good morning, Mermaid. So, no cover story requests this week. We have a beautiful colour spread for this section of the volume, it looks like, and it is all of the straw hats and an elephant. Looks like they're all having a great time, but it's another beautiful colour spread as always. But we have Elbaf to talk about. So, last we had left off, Eam recognised the Nidhogger dragon that obviously Loki had took the previous chapter in the final panel, and he recognised the dragon as someone from a long time ago. And an even a further step to this was when the snow started to collide and lightning was forming. He recognised Ragnir the Hammer. He saw it was Ragnir, he knew who he was, and he realised, and that's when we got the title card for Ragnir the Hammer, who had eaten the mythical squirrel fruit Ratatoskia. So Eam has a big and long-standing connection, it looks like, with Ragnir, a big confrontation, and it looks to be that they've had dealings in the past. We then cut over to, in their fight that carried on between Loki and Eam in these massive explosions, Bonnie and Lilith were safe off to one side but could still see the carnage, and were looking after Sanji and talking about who this dude really is. And Lilith is racking her brain, with all of Vegapunk's knowledge and whatever Vegapunk has told her, that the stages of the world government, she's like, this person was even almost above the Holy Knights, but they weren't an elder, so they a step above, and talking about the corruption there and that power that is behind. And Sanji wakes himself up and immediately darts off and says, he remembers back to when it was just him and Killingham talking, and it was when he'd just been dealt by Eam, and Killingham is now fully empowered, even stronger with the omen that Eam gave him. And he was off. He was like, you've been dealt with, I'm off to go and fulfill my mission to the Great One. I don't have time to waste on you anymore. And he runs off to go and capture the children. So Sanji's like, look, I can't let him get away with this, especially in a country that Usopp and Luffy both love. So he rushes off to go and protect the village and protect the children, which is so noble of Sanji and just so great. And in these in-between moments, we have a very short, brief look into the library where Robin and Saul have found Biblo in a secret chamber underneath with all the books. And Robin's super grateful. And now Saul's like, I've just got more questions than answers now. I'm so grateful as well, but you are now more of a mystery to me, Biblo, than ever before. What's going on? And we cut away to find Summer, who has also been empowered, remember, just throwing down a giant ship like it's nothing at the Rainbow Bridge, ready to take the children that Killingham has gone to capture. And they're in communication with each other over transponder, saying look, we've got 5 minutes at most here, we're getting this done, we've got a mission, the Great One is here, so we are not letting them down. And he asked about Gunko, and Killingham's like, oh, she's dead, there's no helping her now, she's 100% dead, I've seen her, not a chance, it's just me and you now. And he's like, okay, no worries. And then Killingham starts to panic, and he's like, I've done something bad, this could go wrong, but with this power that's gone to my head, I've created, or I've summoned, what I fear. And Summer's like, you have seriously not brought her here? Like, can you control it? Like, is this something we can deal with, or like, what's gonna happen? And Killingham's like, right, as long as it's a nightmare, I should be able to control it. But if it gets out of hand, then we can't be nearby when the consequences, happen. But they will make quick work of capturing the children. So someone's like, okay, just get on with the job. And we see in that moment, Zorro and Goldberg are rushing in as well from the village to where Summer is located to try and cut him off, because out of everyone so far, even though Zorro did take a hit, they're the only two in capable shape of helping out here. The rest of them, we saw, Gerd lose her fingers, but Chopper has stitched them back together. Hyruden was looking rough, and Stanzen's lost a leg. Everyone's in rough shapes at the moment, but these two are like, we're the only ones. And Zorro was like, I can't cross the distance needed. But Goldberg was the only left new giant warrior standing to ferry him. So they're running off. And then we see Killingham start to explain the idea and methodology behind what it is he fears. He talked about like the sun god Nika, and what he'd heard about being as a celestial dragon, living up on that red line up in Marijois, the stories he was told, and there was one that frightened him most, and that was that rain clouds would fall on your head if you were down below. So you were made to fear the rain because it was something you never experienced up in Marijois. So he went on to summon the rain god Zaza, who was this enormous water-made woman who was grabbing and like stealing the children in just pure water form, ripping them out of the buildings, and is ready to ferry them over to where Summer's ship is. And we left that last chapter with Sanji and Zorro both clocking each other, acknowledging the situation, and were ready to act. So this chapter begins with Eam still discussing this vengeance that Ragnar has, and Ragnar has waited all this time to find someone capable of enacting this vengeance upon Eam. And he's just like, he's give up with Loki. He's talking to Ragnar, like the squirrel form is still on Loki's head there, and he's like, are you not, is this not true? Like, were you not waiting for someone to try and fight with me? And Loki's like, what the hell is he talking about here? Like, he is so resilient though, like it's crazy. And then Eam explains, he's like, look, you and Straw Hat Luffy could never be my soldiers. I'll simply have to erase you, just like Dozen. Dozen, a character we've never heard before, referenced by Eam, clearly someone from the Void Century, could be the prime or the purveyor of the Will of D, maybe. We're now getting these big connection and name drops, and it looks to be someone who fought or stood against Eam all those years ago. So in that moment, just a throw-off comment from Eam here. Two massive attacks come out from either side. Huge explosion across the double page. Beautiful to see. But it seems like their clash is going to carry on. They're just going to be going back and forth with each other until, I think, Luffy steps in the ring. But we go back over now to the Western Village, where that, like, heavy rainfall, massive tsunami almost, is drenching the village, and the rain god has captured as many children as possible, is paying no attention to the other adult giants who, Ripley, Ange, Oimo, have all stood up, bandaged up, so Chopper and others have like really done the job here. But clearly they are in no shape to fight, but they are not going down. Like, they are like, I will give my life right now if it means protecting my child. And like, Chopper's trying to say, look, you need to not move, the blood loss, all the transfusions we've just done, like, you will die. And Ripley is like, my life doesn't mean a damn thing right now. Collins does. And is like so hellbent and ferocious. Like, these are Viking-esque warriors here, ready to fight. Elbaf pride on the line. And killing him is just gloating. Like, right, this is really going to just end badly for us, but I guess 7 will do. 7 children's fine. So we see Sanji as the one closing in on Zaza here. Interesting to see how he's going to go against a giant rain woman. I don't know if that's going to cause an issue for him, or whether he will just more focus on the saving the children from her grasp. But he's clearly involved here now, which is going to be great for Sanji. I hope he gets some more spotlights here. But we go away, we don't get to see what happens next, because as the dust settles on the branch, far off on the other side, away from the village, we see the steam and the explosion and the smoke settles, and the block of ice that Gunko's in was untouched. So there's me thinking, 2 chapters ago when Ian finally was moving around the map, buffed up somewhere, left, fired one of the Omen's explosions at Gunko's ice and kept going towards the school to obviously then interact with killing him and then fight Loki where he is now. I genuinely thought that explosion was going to just melt the ice. We saw how strong it was. But no, we heard it before, and clearly even Eam is incapable. Ragnir's ice cannot be melted or destroyed unless Ragnir chooses to. To the point where Ragnir's ice has now withstood an Eam attack. The level this little squirrel's strength is at now has just exponentially grown. The fact that he can create ice not even Eam can destroy. This squirrel is coming out already as the MVP of this arc for how cool he is. And we can see Gunko's still in there, safe and sound, didn't die in the explosion, but the ice certainly didn't even budge. It is still a huge block that it was. But the reason we're looking at Gunko is because we go over now to the other Straw Hats on the sort of edge of the branch. So we've got Jinbei, Nami, Frankie, Brook and Usopp, who are obviously really injured from the initial fight with Gunko and Eam, and are just starting to recover now and regain the senses. And Usopp's like, look, is there a reason you are so hellbent on this woman and confronting her? Because I could tell it was serious and that's why I jumped in, but like, you were really like involved there, Brook. Like, do you know her? And Nami's like, is she someone from like your past? And Brook explains, he's like, look, she's not an enemy, but she's someone I really hope I didn't have to face again. You see, it was supposed to say that way, we weren't going to look at each other, but I'm completely lost now because she would be 77 years old. And Nami's like, it can't possibly be the same person, she's a celestial dragon surely. And Brook explains, he's like, look, the last time I did see her, she was departing for Marie-Joie, she was a princess in my home kingdom. And everyone's like, what? And Frankie is running in and explains the situation to them all, that yeah, she's still frozen, we can't really tell if she's alive or not, but maybe it's for the best right now that she's still locked in the ice. But could she be a lookalike, like just some celestial dragon? And they argue the point. It's like, look, this doesn't change the fact that she was the one who came here to lay siege on Elbaf. And like, right, yeah, it makes perfect sense, I get what you're saying, but she did also release us from our restraints. And Brook's starting to like flashback to the fight now with Gunko, and he's like, look, Usopp got freed, he got freed, and she screamed for Brook to run. And he's questioning and doubting himself now. He's like, why would she do that? She seemingly recognised me. So I don't get what happened, because then she snapped and went back into that devil form. It's almost as if we've witnessed 3 personalities. Now, I think this is a really clever setup from Oda here to reference and again foreshadow the idea of 3 personalities. Now, we know Gunko isn't possessed by 3 different people, but we know how it's set up. So in this situation, Gunko's original personality, the one who came here, then obviously the one who saved Brook and Usopp, or tried to, and then the third being the demonic form that Ian took to possess her. It was like she was being controlled. So they're like, is that something that's possible? And he's like, look, I didn't think it was, but now, after seeing all the demonifications, you know, all the giants turning into demons, it's definitely a conflict I've got in my chest that it is something that is capable. And Jinbei is such a wise man here, and comes in with just such honesty, but like it comes from such a warm place. And he's like, look, I don't want to be insensitive, but we need to know if we're going to spare her or kill her, because we can't leave here until you decide this, Brook. So Brook's in just a turmoil now, with all that's weighing on him, with witnessing and seeing Princess Shuri. Now, Shuri is not 77 years old, but looks the exact same woman that he remembers. And he's like, look, it was a really long time ago. She was just a kid, I was young myself. But there was once a kingdom that fell that was called Esparia. It was a country where music flourished and instruments lined the streets. And what we go into now is more Brook backstory. Now I want to pause here because I wasn't ready for this. I thought Oda had done the Brook stuff. You know, we got the laboon set up. We had the Thriller Bark. We had the devastating flashback with the Rumbar Pirates. You know, we thought that was like Brook. There was so much more to Brook and so much more depth to Brook's history that Oda wasn't done and thought, let's go for round 2. Let's try and do another level of a devastating backstory, and we're not getting even half of it. This could be another chapter or 2 potentially, maybe even a couple more. Depends how long Oda wants to go on here. But seemingly another small backstory within Elbaf of Brook's young past. So it starts 70 years ago, really early in the morning, 4 o'clock, and Brook is waking the town up, he's waking everyone up, singing this Good Morning Mermaid song, and he's belting it out. He's going around the streets. There's people who are hungover. There are little kids waking up and saying good morning to Brook. They recognise his voice. You know, he was the one who is like welcoming the new day with this singing, and it all culminates in Brook jumping over the buildings here in Esparia in what looks to be a replica of like the Nika jump that Luffy's done before, that we've seen with Sun God Nika. And as the dawn breaks, Brook sings his song here. And we go over to the palace and we can see a lot of soldiers are begging the captain to teach them how to do the swift slash. You know, they want this training, but he's doting on Princess Shuri a little too much. And he's like, you need to learn the fundamentals, you know, leave us alone. What are we going to do for dinner? What are we doing? And he's holding this little girl's hand, and we see Captain of the guard corps of Esparia, Brook. 20 years of age. He is the raider captain. He's thinking about Big Sake, of course he is. And he's looking down at little Princess Shuri, who is 7 years old, about what they're doing for tea, and they're talking and singing, and everything's merry. And we can see Shuri's got a sword on her back. Brook's got his sword sheathed as well. So they've been obviously training, and she's talking about, how hard she's worked today. And maybe she is just going to be as strong as her mother. And Brook becomes immediately infatuated by the thought of this woman, Queen Candle. Lady Candle here is a woman who's far superior and far stronger than ever anyone as Brook has seen. And Shuri's like, it's really bad for you to fall in love with a married woman, Brook. And they're joking away, and then the king is just stood there, this huge, burly, rustic-looking man who is Leuven, the king of Esparia. He's literally in just, like, a vest, pants. He's got, like, his royal, like, overcoat, like, cloak, a small crown, but he looks just really rugged and rough around the edges here. And he's, like, talking, he's trimming his hedges, and he's like, I'll execute you, Brook, for saying stuff like this. So Brook obviously freaks out. Shuri's happy to see her dad. He seems like a pretty nice dude, actually, all things considered. Rough exterior, but a really cool guy. And they talk about, like, this joking banter they have with each other. And then Shuri announces then, you know what, when I grow up, when I'm older, I'll marry you. And the king freaks out, like, Shuri shouldn't be saying stuff like this. And Brook's like, no, you're too young, but I don't want a bride. He's got a runny nose, And then the king starts to lash out at Brook, and he just keeps dodging his attacks. It's actually funny. But we get an immediate guard response of there's been an attack, or we've got a massive problem happening. Riders from a gang nearby have started to close in on the palace. Well, more specifically, they're actually heading off from the palace and are heading towards the opera house. So these sort of individuals who have come upon port here are heading, and they're outnumbering all of the corpsmen here. So all of the soldiers that live in this town, they are massively outnumbered by the scale of this, like, raiding party. And they've obviously figured out that because they're heading for the opera house, they are after Queen Candle for some reason. Not sure why, but could it be the Moron family is questioned here. So, they've been after Candle for years. They've finally landed to shore, so we need to get a message to the opera house as soon as possible to warn her. And the guard's like, yeah, about that, all the opera house snails are set to do not disturb, so we can't get through. So he freaks out. They're all like, Brook, are we going to do something here? Like, we need to go and save the queen. And he's like, the Moron family? That's actually really strange. I'm sure I met them at the harbour, like, earlier today. Like, that is strange. And we see the avenue that leads to the opera house, Opera Avenue, has these massive gang riders coming in, looking very menacing, flanking around the whole opera door, and are literally waiting for the queen to come out, ready to just either execute her or kidnap her. We don't know what. But the queen is inside, and we get a brief look at her where she's clapping away at the end of the performance, saying how wonderful it was. And they're like, right, Don Moron told us that we can shoot you if you refuse, but this settles it today. You're finally gonna learn to love the boss. So these are like gangsters. They're all in like those hats, very similar to Beige, that sort of mafia style, and they're all ready to take on the queen. So the king is obviously freaking out at this. He's begging Brook, like, what can we do? And he's like, yo, my royal bro, don't worry about it, you know. The queen herself is strong, but there's not a chance they're going to catch her, you know. It really is quite a shame, but they actually didn't realise it. But I ran into them at port earlier, and you see, I've actually already sliced them all down. And we go back to the Opera Avenue, and they all immediately get attacked by sword slashers. The whole group fall down instantaneously, and everyone's like, hold on, what just happened? Of course, it was the 3-pace hum notch slash. Brook had attacked them earlier in the morning, and then the attack activated now. This dude is on another scale. Like, we've seen the attacks. He's done this before where he slashed at someone, sheathed the cane, then the attack goes off when he names it. This man attacked these people hours ago. Met them at port this morning when he was singing his song, you know, prancing around the island. That is very musically themed and all. Like, he talked about the instruments, but there is a giant harp on the island, which is really cool. But he was jumping around, you know, doing all singing, all dancing. Attack these guys because he's just that skilled. Then has now got to the point where he's like, oh, you know, I actually dealt with those guys earlier, so now that they've acted, then they've all just been sliced down. And in that moment we see, oh, everyone's safe again, so the Queen can come out. And lo and behold, Queen Candle herself steps out of the opera house, looking awfully suspiciously like a holy knight. The regalia she's in, like the blazer, and I don't know what the full term is for like the cloak and duffels and stuff, looks awfully similar to how we've seen like Shamrocks and others. Very holy knight. Is this the connection we're getting with why Shuri then has to go Marishwa and stuff? Is she an agent here that's like planted herself on the island and has worked her way up to Queen? Who knows? But she's definitely going to have a connection to Marishwa. But the chapter concludes with her grand entrance, looking very regal, looking very fierce, you know, sword sheathed. And 70 years ago, there were 2 stars on this island. There was the Queen, the former commander of the Royal Guard Corps, and now obviously Queen Candle. And obviously the other is, through his music, would slash down his target so swiftly they never even noticed they had been cut. He was a master of the swift slash technique, and he was the captain of the raiders here, the Humming Brook. This was when the kingdom was at peace. I think that definitely couple of chapters, depends how long Old wants to go. It could be like 5 or 6, maybe more. We're gonna get more backstory here for Brook. Like, this is all getting explained now. I did not even conceive that Elbaf was a point where Brook got backstory. But what a perfect like interjection, because obviously we've now got the Gunko connection here. Oda's just coming out with it here. Like, it's not going to be like when the dust settles and Gunko. We probably thought Gunko would get herself free, or they freed her, and she then maybe sides with the Straw Hats. It could have been then, but no. Brook's explaining the situation now because it's such a heavy decision he has to make here. So I don't know what he's going to do, because poor man's got the weight of the world on his shoulders now. And we've still got all the chaos of what the Holy Knight and Eam are currently doing. So there's a lot moving. And this is even to caveat the whole, is this still going to be an Usopp arc? You know, Usopp has dreamed about Elbaf for years. And yet, look at everyone else's setup here. So, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to get more Brook, but when are we going to get some Usopp moments, you know? So, we will see. There's no break next week, so we're definitely going to get more to this backstory. But I'm down for it. I love Brook. Such a great character. So I can't wait for it. But thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of this chapter, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.